In this episode of the Event Collab podcast, we speak with Michael Viljoen, co-founder of J Street Productions, about how J Street got started and how collaboration is key to success.
Welcome to the Event Collab podcast, where we feature people in the event industry and beyond who collaborate to make events and human connections more memorable. In each episode, we interview a new guest who brings a refreshing perspective on live events and human connection-related topics and technologies. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Event Collab podcast. We're so excited to have you here. My name's Chris. This is Mark. Mark, how you doing today, man?
Good morning, Chris. I'm doing very well. I had a little mountain bike ride this morning, and I'm feeling freshy fresh. So let's get into it.
Nice.
This is actually a really good one. I mean, it's very personal for me, obviously, because Michael and I are friends and business partners in J Street Productions. So he's one of the co-founders of J Street Productions. He's got a long, colorful history in the event industry. He's built and sold several different companies in the industry, and he talks a little bit about it today. It was a really good conversation with him this morning. But you know, I remember the first time he and I met when he picked me up at the airport from at LAX for one of the large outdoor events, that first large outdoor event that we did together. And it was like there was a very instant connection, and I felt like I was part of their team from like day one. So he's been a very good collaborator. He's been a very good advocate of collaborating and treating people like people since the day I've met him. So this is a great conversation, and I'm happy that we get to share it with the audience today.
Michael, welcome to the show. Michael Viljoen, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Thank you. So glad to have you, man. Real quick, tell us just a little bit about yourself. What do you currently do? What is the position that you're currently doing?
Well, I'm one of the founding partners for J Street. At the moment, I spend a ton of information actually looking over the financial books. I think one of the more challenging things that I do on a day in, day out basis is manage cash flow, which can be a challenge for any business, but a business growing at our level tends to take a lot more attention to detail. It's kind of interesting in terms of business management, and I don't know this from either practical experience or education, but I've started to put together the fact that as a business grows, certain things become critically important, and other things which you would think would be important continually, they don't drop off the radar screen, but you don't pay a lot of attention to them. And then later on in the process, I think you start to pay attention to some of the things that you've been ignoring for a while, and then they start to become priorities. And I think at the moment we are with J Street right now, it's critically important that we are maintaining a view on growth. And in doing that, cash flow has become so critically important. And we have, pop-up expenses that show up and things like that. So it's an interesting part for me. But the other part of things that I do, obviously, is I still produce and manage events, and I still really, really enjoy that. There's a part of me that would like to get back to doing, more of the event management and less of the accounting work. But at the end of the day, we all take on roles here that we have to have in order to keep everything moving forward. And surrounding yourself with good people with good knowledge base and good work ethic really helps us kind of push the cart forward.
Yeah, man.
So Michael, I know that you and I have talked extensively about like how both of us got started in the industry since we've been friends and business partners for so long. Can you share with everybody else though how you actually got started in the live event part of the industry?
Yeah, sure. I think that like a lot of people, I was really interested in music. I was a band geek, for lack of a better term. But back in the days when I was a band geek, that was not an appealing term to anybody. The band geeks were the ones that couldn't make it out onto the playing field for the most part. So the things that I really enjoyed in junior high school, and some of the college that I had in my life was uh, being able to be involved with music and being a musician. About the time I was 14 or 15, I was already playing in rock and roll bands and clubs and things like that, which was a little young because we were way below the drinking age, and yet we were still playing in some of these clubs, which was kind of fun. We would play Thursday through Sunday. My parents would, I don't know how they did it. My parents didn't see me for 4 days out of the week. I had a best friend who was essentially our band leader, and I would stay at his house and sleep on the couch night after night after night because we were, practicing until 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. Then we'd get up and we'd go to school. We'd turn around and come back and we'd do it again, or we'd play, club and wedding dates and whatever. I think all collectively we're in about 3 or 4 different bands. So that's the background for a much shorter story, which is that after a while, I started becoming involved in the technical side of what we were doing. I later was in a small Christian rock and roll band that actually toured up and down the East Coast. And when that happened, I had to change roles from being a musician in the band to starting to manage some of the technical. And then out of that, I met a guy who actually owned a production business in Herndon, Virginia, where I started my first role as a sound guy, and that continued for about 15 or 20 years. So there were several collaborations of businesses and different businesses that we started and stopped. But I think being a musician got me into the technical side of the industry. It gave me an ability to keep my hand in the musical side of what was going on, and yet I was able to actually make a living and raise a family. And so since then, I've been on the corporate industrial side mostly for the last 35 years.
That's so cool. There's a bunch of things in there I never even remember hearing, man. That's so cool. What inspired you to start J Street Productions? Like that's always a cool story I like to hear.
Well, like anything, I think it's an evolution. You start with the fact that you've had a couple of businesses, you've seen some success, you've seen some failures, and you try to reimagine what the next step is going to look like. One of my big steps was joining a couple of production companies that were certainly bigger than I was. I had a small mom and pop shop production company, which I really could never get beyond a certain point. Don't think in any given year we increased more than $750,000 in a year, which can to some can sound like a big number, but when you're trying to deal with a business that has such high overhead in terms of gear and what you have to do to maintain in the industry, it was frustrating. But I did all kinds of things, including building my own speaker cabinets. When one style of cabinet no longer was acceptable to the industry, I would get in the wood shop and I would chop up cabinets and I would build them and I would create what was current and then use the components that I already had into those boxes. And that got me involved with not only the cabinetry side of things, but then I moved into the acoustic side of things. Just parenthetically, during this time, I actually spent a couple of years at Northern Virginia Community College, actually teaching acoustics and teaching basic electrical engineering, at least as it attributes itself to our industry. And I found that really remarkable and interesting. I loved the teaching aspect of what we were doing. Ultimately, it was a recording arts technology school that I was teaching in. And at that time, I also owned a 24-track audio recording studio that we did a lot of various things in. So, you kind of touch all these things that you're involved in and try to learn a little bit along the way. And you're branching out, trying to make money at the same time. You're very interested. And forgive me, but I call it almost a hobbyist mentality. You're so in love with the industry that you start to operate as a hobbyist. Which can be the kiss of death, in terms of trying to build a business. So getting to the J Street question, inside all of that, you've learned and you've tried things and things have worked, things haven't worked. And so I thought, well, I've got one more big go around for me at this stage of my life. And Mark and I got together one evening and we had a nice dinner with a lot of beverages, and we started contemplating what if. And out of those what if questions was this what if we started production business that we could really try to use some of the experience that we've had in the past. And I think I communicated at the time that if I was going to do this, this would be the last one. I didn't know if I had it in me to do it again. So we had a nice evening. We all went home. And very early in the morning, I think the next day, and I actually don't remember this, but Mark says I called him the next day and I said, "Are you still serious about this?" And so then we started a series of meetings to try to figure out how we would put this all together and what that would look like. And so that's really a very long answer, but as I said, you don't make these decisions based on a feeling you have on Tuesday. It's really an evolution of spending a lot of time in the industry and doing a lot of things that you develop ideas of what you would like to do for your next step. And for us right now, this is our next step.
Yeah, I still remember that phone call. I was still sleeping when you woke me up. It was a really great evening. To your point, it was a great evening. I also remember a lot of the conversations we had after that, where we were trying to talk about the framework that we were going to build the company around. Talk a little bit about how collaboration plays a role inside of the internal framework of J Street Productions as a company.
Well, I sort of answered that a second ago. The businesses that I had before were very much me oriented, and I really I knew what my skill sets were. I knew what I could and I couldn't do. And if you don't know, you'll learn quickly. You just put yourself on the firing line, and other people will tell you that you're good at this, but you're not good at that, or you're not experiencing the kind of success that you want. So, in the conversations with Mark, one of the key factors that we discussed was, I know that I can get any business that I start to this point, but I really can't get it any further than that. And it became clearly evident to me that in order to really grow a business, you've got to surround yourself with people. And here's the trick: you don't surround yourself with people who think like you. You don't surround yourself with people that you agree with. You don't surround yourself with people who are going to say yes to everything you bring to the table. And that is a remarkably difficult process, because even even when you're good friends, even when you have tremendous emotional attachment to the people that are around you, you're going to have conflict, and conflict in itself is not a bad thing. Conflict generates rapid and immediate problem solving, and as a result can really develop immediate and rapid growth. So surround yourself with very, very good, smart, talented people, but make sure they don't always agree with you. In fact, if you can find somebody on the opposite end of the spectrum, it's hard to live through, I can guarantee you, but it actually, because it gives you the ability to really generate the kind of problem solving skills that you can't have by yourself, because you're only ever going to look at things from one perspective.
That's so funny.
I think I did.
Yeah, that's so good, man. Man, so one of the funny things is I think back to when I started working with J Street, right? The first time as a freelancer. And it's funny because like the opportunity that you gave me, like we actually didn't meet. Like it was a phone call, but it was based off the fact that you trusted the person who introduced you to me, right? And so, when it comes to collaboration, I think one of the cool things is, and understanding how you view this, how does collaboration play outside of J Street, like with the vendors that you work with the freelancers, with the other companies? How does that play a huge part in that for you?
Well, yeah, I remember that phone call actually, and I think, wasn't it Tim that sent your
It
number?
was it was Tim. Yep.
So I'm not really. Boy, how do I answer that? I'm not really sure how to answer that. The collaboration part, I think, as I described it in terms of business partnership, I think is exactly the way it is. I think that when you're dealing with freelancers and uh, temporary partnerships that you set up, and I think freelancers are temporary partnerships that you set up. They're just, in a lot of cases, they're a 24-hour commitment as opposed to, months or years or decades, right? So um, the the connection to the phone call with you was something that we uh, internally discuss all the time, which is we'll meet someone and we'll say, "Hey, um, he's one of us," and that's such an intangible thing for the most part. In fact, meeting Mark for the first time, we were doing an event out in LA, and through a long series of uh, uh, circumstances, I had to pick Mark up from the airport, and we had to do a site visit. He was going to bring it, and we he popped into the car. We had 3 or 4 sentences, and I'm like, "Yeah, this is going to work just fine," because he was one of us. He understood the methodology. He understood what we were trying to do, and it really had nothing to do with skill set. It had to do with, um, as I can try to describe it, a mental mindset, an attitude, uh, an upbeat and collaborative view. And sort of, I mean, there's the word collaborative again, but the collaborative view of, all right, I think he probably said, and I don't remember specifically, but all right, where are we going? What are the challenges? What do we have to do? How quickly do we have to do it? And so all of a sudden, he's already trying to build the project in his head. And so uh, that's one of the intangibles that we will notice about individuals right away. The other part is one of the things that's always been said about the groups that I've worked with, and I don't, this is no tribute to me, this is just what we've tried to communicate to the people around us and how we work, is clients will often say, well, you guys have so much fun while you're working. And I think that's, I'm not silly. I don't think that happens every single time, but I think it happens most times. And I think it's because we surround ourselves with people that we can get along with and that we understand. And even if we don't necessarily agree with them, we know that we're all there for a common purpose. And being able to collaborate in that regard, I think, is quite important. I think we end up with people around us that are like us, and not like us in terms of they agree with us, but like us in terms of temperament and being able to work together. Because look, if you're going to, in a lot of cases, we're spending 10, 12, 14, 16 hours on job site every day, day after day after day. And I'm sure that we see each other more than we see our families, which is probably a sad fact about the industry. But at the end of the day, you've got to create a situation where you can work together.
Michael, I'll also say I feel like you are one of the initial drivers of how we try to treat vendors and subcontractors and stagehands like they're part of the team and not just like a temporary help. And I think that attitude has permeated itself inside the company, and that helps us outside also. So, I
Well, we
also
try to communicate. No, you try to communicate that every time that you're out on site. I mean, the thing is, you surround yourself with people that you know that you can trust. And then before you leave, uh, well, you arrive and you shake their hands and you hug them and you tell them, great to see you. I can't believe that you're here. This is fantastic. And not in a fake sort of way. Really, like, I can't believe that I got all you guys on my job again today. This is great because now I know my day's going to be easy. We've worked together. We've cultivated a list of people that we try to get on every job. Now, we don't always get the same people on every job, but uh, we have a goal to be able to bring all those people that we really trust into the mix. And you thank them on the way in. You work hard and you play hard all the way through the day. And then by the time you get to the end, you shake their hands and you hug them and you thank them and you tell them, I can't wait to see you on the next show. And so that's not something that you can do once or twice and it sticks. And quite honestly, there are so many freelancers and there are so many local hands that we work with. I know a lot of their names, but when I don't see them for a couple of months, sometimes the name can get foggy. Um, but I never forget them. I might forget their name for 2 or 5 minutes. Um, I may have to get reacclimated with some people that I don't see all that often. Um, but I know who they are. Um, I'll give you a short story here. I did a youth program when I was a kid. We went down to a place called the Redbird Mission, which was in Kentucky somewhere. I don't even remember where it was. It was back in the holes in the mountain. We were doing little projects like uh, actually taking hay off some fields that had been recently harvested, and we were piling them into trucks and trailers and sending them up to the main farm. And then we were repairing some of the buildings that were there. And I remember there was a garage that had been recently put up, and we needed to paint the inside and the outside of it. So that was part of the project that we did there. And at the end of the week, one of the guys there said something very interesting that I've never really forgotten, and it was, I see all your faces. I'll never remember any of your names. You'll leave here, and in a week, you'll all be forgotten names as far as I'm concerned. And I felt really put out. I was like, well, dude, we spent a whole week together, and we did all this work, and you're not even going to remember my name. But the truth is, he may have somebody coming in the following month where he's got another 12 or 14 or 20 names to remember. And it's quite obvious that he's not going to remember our names. But he followed that up with, I may not remember your name, but I'll never forget the work you did while you were here. I'll always know that you were the person that painted that garage. You were the person that helped us get the hay off the field and into the farm. And that is a lot the way that life is. I think when you see the same people day in and day out, obviously you're going to remember their names. But what I don't ever forget is whether your name comes to my mind immediately, is that I know the work that I know responsible for, and how you behave. And in that way, you will always be my friend because I know who you are on the inside, not necessarily just your moniker.
Yeah, that's really great. That's a really great story, Michael. And you live that attitude every day. I mean, the number of years I've been around you, I can speak that that's absolutely your attitude all day. Um, Talk a little bit about what things that you're interested in that are not J Street Productions, or what ventures you're working on that are outside of J Street Productions,
Uh, well,
or the event
that's,
industry in general.
um, I always have a lot of little things that I do. My wife and I have the most amazing relationship, and I thank God every day that she puts up with me because we have just a wonderful life. We enjoy travel, so traveling is a big part of what we talk about and dream about day in and day out. But I have hobbies like everybody else. I enjoy golf. That's been a nice exercise routine. This past summer, I haven't done much over the winter time, but this past summer I started riding a bicycle for the first time, really from an exercise perspective, and that's been a lot of fun. I uh, enjoy those extracurricular activities, and as I'm getting older, the physical part of it is actually more important than even the activity. But just to stay active, especially with COVID. I mean, we go from working 18 hours a day and loading semis to doing absolutely nothing, and so that really started to have an effect on my personal life. The things that I really really enjoy that are not necessarily work related, J Street related, is still being a musician. I try to play every day if I possibly can. Not every day I'm capable of doing it, but I have a little studio set up at my house. I rarely play publicly or out with other people uh, at all, but the ability for me to sit down and actually be creative and pick up a bass and actually play, and I've got a song list and process that I go through. That's always a lot of fun. I enjoy a lot of construction projects. I try to at least have a small construction project going on all the time because I really enjoy that part of the process. So I have these things to keep me busy, but none of them really are supremely important other than just continued development. I like the fact that I've always got something to do. I don't like being idle.
Oh, that's so good, man. I need to pick up some of those activities. Get active. Um, what what inspires you most about this industry? Like, I mean, because you told your story of how much time you spend in it. Like, what keeps you inspired and about the industry and the people in it?
Um, I think you can fall in love with the people. That's easy. I think you surround yourself with people that you like. You find people that you can trust, and varied backgrounds, different opinions. Some of my best friends don't think the way I think, but that really makes very little difference. It's about the quality of the person that they are for the most part. Um, I think that, and this is not my answer, but I think the best answer I've heard for this industry is you walk into a square box that has nothing in it, you build an event, and the crowd goes away at the end. You do the event, they go away, and then you return it back to an empty box. I think that that is probably the best description of what we do. And everything that we do may not look exactly like that, but it all stems from that kind of a process of being able to uh, take and build something from nothing, make it look like it was there for 100 years, and then turn around and walk away, and it all disappears again. We throw it all back into the warehouse and we do it again on another day.
Oh man, that's so good. Um, Man, one of the things I learned from you just over the years, and even more so in this conversation, is relationships. And that's what I learned. That was one of the biggest things. And I tell the story sometimes, and people laugh when I tell them after. It was the reason that you kept me around was not because I was actually great at being an audio engineer. It wasn't that I was great at that. It was because I was a good person. And I laugh at people like, man, that was straightforward. And I was like, but it taught me something, and it taught me that the relationships are what's most important in this thing. You can almost teach anybody to do the stuff we do. The technical stuff. It's like I can teach you if you have some sort of aptitude, but to be able to like you while we're here, that's the plus. And I learned that from you. So one of the things I always wonder is, from a client perspective, the most successful and the most meaningful events that they're doing, what can they learn from that? Like, what can other clients learn from your experiences in that?
From a client perspective.
Yeah, so bringing in new clients that aren't experienced, they have no clue, right? They're like, I'm just throwing events to throw events. But some of the relationships that I've seen you have with clients for 10, 12 years that you've been working with that are successful over and over and over again. What do the people newer to the industry need to know that is keeping those events successful and those partnerships successful?
Well, I look. Um, all right, so let me go back and talk about partnerships, but I need to tack on what you started this with. Um, what you said was completely true in terms of why I like keeping you around, but I just don't want you to sell yourself short. It's not that you didn't have skills; you had plenty of skills. I think that the thing, and this is going to bump into the relationship with clients, but let's take it from the perspective of people that you work with, people that you seek to work with, whether it's uh, people working alongside you or clients. Uh, Skill sets are not what they're drawn up to be when look you put together a CV and you put all your skill sets on there and you send it to somebody and you want them to be impressed, and the truth is skill sets have very little to do with you getting work and getting a job and working with other people and doing all those other things. Now, I don't think that Chris Giles would have been successful at J Street either the first or second time, uh, having no skills. I mean, look, Chris, you're a great guy. I like having you around, but if you can't do the job, there's not much that we can do. Um, but the other side of that is, I don't need you to be on a 10 out of 10 on the skill set side if you're a 10 out of 10 on the person side. The person side is far more necessary for your continued growth and success. Um, the thing that I see in sales all the time is uh, the most qualified company doesn't get the job. The company that has the greatest relationship with their client gets the job. And so bringing it back to the end of your question, which was, what is it that you want clients to know? There are very practical things that clients need to know. There are skill sets that they don't have that you need to try to teach them. And one of them is if you've got a complicated production process, you should uh, get your production partner involved even before you sign your venue contract. There are things that they can help you with that you're not actually seeing right away because you're so wrapped up into I've got to get a space, I've got to get a space, and I've seen it over and over again. They commit to things that they really shouldn't be aware of. But let's go back a little bit to what is it that I'm looking for in a client. We talked about what I'm looking for in an employee, or what I'm looking for in a business partner, or what I'm looking for in a freelancer. From a client perspective, it really stems around, in my mind, trust. So I currently have a client, and no names, but I was her production guy for a while, and we got into a huge conflict, and I was like, that's it. I can't do this. Not with this client. This needs to be handled by somebody else, which honestly is exactly what happened. And then years later, we have re-collaborated again, and we have a better relationship now than we've ever had. But the conversation that I had with her was, look, I'm not a perfect individual. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm sure I made mistakes that created a rift between us. That part of it is not really that important. What's really important is that you understand that I am on your side. And I think that what you have to do with establishing a relationship with a client is say, I'm going to potentially make mistakes. I'm going to try very hard not to make a mistake. There's a process in which that you both need to work together in order to find the beginning part of a project and the end of part of the project. But if there's no trust in between, that you're both working at the same goal, or if they have to look over their shoulders to make sure that you're doing your job, or if they feel that you're going to make decisions that are in the best interest of you and not the best interest of them, then you're never going to have a great relationship with the client. You're always going to have clients like that. And part of it is because they don't let you in. So you can beg to be, but sometimes they won't let you in. And that the answer to that question is you find people that you can develop a level of trust with. And that's not really necessarily the same as getting along with them. I've got clients that I don't necessarily get along with, but they never don't have trust that I have their best interest at heart. And that's the part you have to maximize on. Not everybody's going to click at an emotional level that just makes everybody best friends. But if they know that you've got their best interest at heart, you're not going to hide facts from them. I had a client long time ago who she was a tremendous client, and it was a very, very complicated process. And I worked with her over a long period of time. And one of the first times I met her, she pulled me aside and she said, "Look, I don't care what it is. Just tell me about it. I will work through anything with you, and we will always be on the same page, and I will always support you, but don't hide things from me and don't lie to me. And if you can live with those rules, we'll never have a problem." And that was very true, because we ended up with, in such a complicated project, you're always going to end up with things that fall on what would be the other side of the fence for them or the other side of the fence for you. But you have to be committed to being able to press forward with some honesty and some candid information, even if it makes you personally look bad, so that you can move on and come up with a positive solution.
Man, that's so good, man. I think that's so cool because everything you just said, and again, this is the Event Collab podcast, so we're always talking about collaboration, but everything that you said ties it all together. Like for J Street Productions, like this is what makes us the differentiators in this industry, right? Is that it's about relationships first. And like, I just love how you kind of wrap that, not just from a client perspective, but you talked about the team, you talked about the freelancers, the contractors, like how everybody, the relationship is the key to making it all happen. And so what we want to do, man, we appreciate you coming on and being a guest. At the end of these, what we like to do is do a rapid fire, fun questions, just to make it easy to get out of this and learn a couple of, fun things about you. You ready for it?
Sure.
All right. First up, are you a coffee or a tea guy?
Coffee.
Coffee all day. Is it, look, no sponsorships, but is there a specific one?
No, no, no. I Vito says that I have coffee bleach that I put in my coffee every day, which he and I spend a lot of time together. My favorite thing is I'll have a couple of cups of coffee in the morning. Rarely three, but those first two are super important for me to be able to get going. And yes, I do have a problem.
How many times have I called you for a phone call, a question at 8 o'clock in the morning, and said, "Hey, am I on cup one or cup two?" Cup
It's an
one, Michael,
important
or cup
qualifier.
two? Right. All right, Michael, what's your favorite mobile phone app?
Mile IQ.
Oh, the accountant comes out.
The accountant
Yeah,
comes out.
the finance side of me just, it's not just the financing side. I think part of it is the ability for me to track where I am. Like, uh, I try to be diligent about putting everything that I'm doing in the calendar or on my to-do list so that I have a record of the pieces and uh, processes that I'm going through during the course of a week. It helps analyze whether I'm being successful or not. And Mile IQ, other than just tracking business and personal miles, uh, also does a great job of tracking where I am. So if I get to my calendar and I'm like, well, I've got an expense here for this and I can't remember what I was doing and it's not in my calendar, I can go back to Mile IQ and actually look at, oh, I was driving through Towson, Maryland. Why was I in Towson? And so, then I'd be able to attach the activity that I had with what was going on. So I find it to be a very useful app.
Oh, all right. What is one question that you wish people would ask you?
That's not a fun question. I don't know. I don't know. I actually don't know. So, okay, so I'll answer it this way. I'm sure that there are dozens of questions that I'd like people to ask me, and I think it all depends on the circumstances and what we're talking about at the time. But I tell people this all the time. I'm not a particularly open person by definition because I'm an introvert for the most part. I love collaborations one on one. Even having two of you looking at me during this interview puts me a little bit on the edge of the other side of the fence. But if this was a one-on-one, hours I could talk, and I would just love it. I love one-on-one interactions. Um, Add a third, fourth, fifth person. If you get to five people, I will lock up like a drum. I can't deal with multiple people. I'm not very good at social networking for that reason. Um, but the question that I want to be asked, um, I don't know. I don't know that there is a question. I think that the thing that I think about in that regard is, um, because I'm a good one-on-one communicator, uh, be careful what you ask me. Because while I'm an introvert, and while I'm not necessarily dramatically open in a traditional sense, I'm not real shy about telling you anything that you give me a straightforward question to. It can be embarrassing. It can be things you would never communicate about in public. It could be anything. So I often tell people, be careful what you ask me because I will actually tell you the truth.
So good.
All right, Michael, besides the Event Collab podcast, what's your favorite blog or podcast or book or ebook? It can be current because I'm sure that it's changed.
Well, I'm not really great at reading, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And I actually don't listen to a lot of audiobooks during the winter months because my routine is I get on my bicycle now and I turn on an audiobook, and that gives me something to listen to while I'm riding for an hour, hour and a half. And if I'm driving out to, uh, some location somewhere that's going to take an hour and a half, I'll often put on either a podcast or a book, and I'll try to listen while I'm on the way. Um, I love movies and I love all those things. So I'm not really good about nailing down one specific thing, but I will tell you that I have one obsession that just drives my wife insane, and that is Lee Sklar has a bass channel that I have been listening to since the beginning of COVID. And I just love this guy. I love everything about him. I love the way he thinks. I love the way he interacts with people. I can't say that he has no ego because, occasionally you hear things that he says that he has an ego, but he has a healthy ego. He has an ego that says that I've been playing in the musical industry for over 50 years. I've recorded on 2,500 albums at least. And he just talks about what's going on in his life, what's going on with his dogs, what's going on with the projects that he's worked on. And if I have an obsession, it's the Lee Sklar site. He is terrific.
Yeah,
I,
that's
I
so
was thinking
good.
that, of course. So, yeah.
Oh, that's so good, man. All right, what's your favorite city to work in?
Oh, I think still Washington D.C. I was born in South Africa, but we moved to New Jersey suburbs when I was about 5, and so we spent all my growing up years in various locations in New Jersey. My grandfather and his father before him were all brought over by the German brewmeisters to open breweries in Pennsylvania, and that's kind of why we ended up in that local area. When I was 19, I had graduated from high school just about a year, and I was working for IBM at the time, and they moved me down to Washington D.C. And I enjoyed Washington when we were here, as we came as kids, and we would do the tourist thing. But I always loved the area. I uh, was always a Washington football fan for years and years and years. Even when I was up in Philadelphia, I was not an Eagles fan. I was a Washington fan for the most part. Um, I enjoyed coming down here. I've always loved Washington. They call it the most powerful city in the world, and in some ways, that's probably true. And it's a wonderful place to be. There's uh, meetings here about why people are not having meetings. Things like that. They just talk about everything here. But the thing I like the most about the places here are the monuments in the city, and the fact that for the most part it has a 12-story height limit. It makes Washington a very remarkable place to live. And the only other place that I would want to live other than here on an extended basis is probably Paris.
All right, this will be a fun one. Considering that this is the beginning of the post-COVID live events open up world, where do you think the live event industry is going to be in 3 years?
Well, I've spent the last 2 or 3 years trying to figure that out, and I haven't been right even once. I think the only thing that we can say with any certainty is that the the virtual side of what we've had to develop during the COVID years is going to be with us at some point or another, whether it's streaming our events out on a regular basis. But video capture, I think, is here to stay, and I think that the decision to allow people from outside the four walls where you're having an event or a concert become collaborative and be a part of that environment, I think is going to continue. And I don't think that there should be any risk for that. I think people will pay for both, and I think both of them have economic models that can work. Um, Clients, however, need to attach themselves to the fact that what started out as live events many years ago is now going to slowly and more consistently morph into better and better television production throughout. While we're doing live events, a portion of that event is always going to be produced based on what would now be considered TV production. And I think that those monikers are going to change. What we call things are going to continue to develop and change, but that's as close as I can get to where the event industry is going. People still want to be together. We're still going to have live events, but I think the model that we had prior to COVID is gone. And I think if you're looking to try to resurrect that in its entirety, I think you're going to miss the boat.
That's good. What is the best piece of advice that you were ever given?
Hmm. Um, there are many things I've been told that have been dramatically useful to me. Probably not the prettiest to say out loud is that I will uh, agonize over decisions that I have to make for a very, very long time. And every once in a while, my wife will basically put her foot down and say something to the effect of, "Okay, I'm tired of hearing about this. Make a decision, or don't talk to me about this ever again." And so that usually gets me moving in a direction. I'm the guy who wants to overanalyze and give things a follow run through before I just simply make a decision, which can be good, and at times it can be very, very bad. And so, what I've spent a lot of time doing is trying to figure out how to balance that perspective. I don't know if that's the greatest advice that I've ever gotten, but it's certainly been the most practical.
I take it. I like it.
And what does collaboration mean to you, Michael?
Collaboration equals strength. I think how much strength is very much dependent on what you do with it. But we've talked about quite a few aspects of collaboration through this talk. I think maybe collaboration by some people's standards is a varied definition. Like you're never going to get the same answer from everyone. But I think no matter how you cut collaboration to be useful for you in life, I think that if you are looking over your shoulder and saying, I'm not any stronger for this collaboration, that's where you have to start asking questions if you're in the right moment.
So, after all this, man, what's the best way for people to connect with you or find you? Or I heard you say introverts. I don't know if you even want people to know where you are. Is that
Um, call J Street and ask him for my number, and I'll pick up the phone. I guarantee it. I am not a social media guru. My fascination these days is with Reddit. I've kind of given up on Facebook. LinkedIn is very useful to me to kind of know what's going on inside and outside our industry. But even LinkedIn has started to become non-business oriented with a lot of the postings that are going on. So it has kind of changed its model along the way. I think most of the LinkedIn folks are a little unhappy about that it needs to be more business and less personal opinion. But things change. You can see that Twitter has changed and Facebook has changed, and Facebook changed to the point where I just could not really. I mean, I don't care what I had for lunch. I can't imagine somebody else would care. So I just could not sign into Facebook and make that work anymore. So to reach me, call me, send me a text. We can collaborate. Send me an email. I'm perfectly good on email and text. I guess it's the old guy in me sticking out.
Oh, good, man. Well, look, I just want to thank you, Michael, so much. This means the world to have you on and be able to. I hear stories from you, but there's always layers, and I hear new things every time we talk. So we just want to appreciate you for taking the time out and being on the Event Collab podcast, man.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for joining us today on the Event Collab podcast. Remember, competition makes us become the best version of ourselves, and collaboration makes it better for all of us. We'll see you in the next episode.